Hi, dear friends. Some words of Torah for Parshat Devarim. The book of Devarim of Deuteronomy is Moshe's opportunity to recap the 40 years he's been leading his disciples, the Jewish people. He imparts to them the most important lessons and messages that hopefully will instruct their future in the Promised Land. Often, Moshe's recollections of the desert stories are different from the way they were originally recorded in the earlier books of the Torah. This is not because the Bible has multiple authors. Rather, it is because historical events can be related with differing narratives depending upon the audience and the desired message of each individual story. At the beginning of Devarim, Moshe reviews the story of how judges were selected to help Moshe lead the Jewish people and adjudicate their questions and quarrels. There are many discrepancies between the way the story appears here and the way it originally appeared back in Parshat Yitro. Here is just one example. In Parshat Yitro, the Torah portrays Moshe as being the one to select the additional judges. As the Torah states, Ve'ata techezeh mikol ha'am. You, Moshe, should gaze out upon the nation and choose appropriate leaders who will be fair and impartial. But in our narrative, here in our Parsha, Moshe relates that he had urged the people themselves to select the appropriate judges from among their respective tribes. Havu lachem anashim chachamim. You Israelite people, you select for yourselves wise and discerning men who are known to your tribes. So what's the reason for this difference in the narrative? When we examine Rashi, the contradiction between the two narratives is even more glaring. When Moshe was asked to gaze out and choose judges in Parshat Yitro, Rashi explains that gazing is a code word for Moshe's prophetic ability to peer into their souls to determine if they were worthy of being a judge. But in our text, Rashi seems to say the exact opposite. When Moshe told the people that they should choose the judges, Rashi explains that Moshe was in essence saying, if a person comes before me wrapped in his Tallis, how am I supposed to know who he is, what tribe he's from, and if he's worthy? You, people, on the other hand, you'll be able to recognize him since you raised him in your tribe. Some commentaries learn from here that even a tzaddik like Moshe can be deceived by external appearances. Even a Moshe with divine inspiration, when faced with someone piously wrapped in a talit, may not be able to discern the person's true nature and must consult with people who grew up with this person to see if he's really worthy. Once a group of Hasidim came to the holy Chozeh of Lublin and showed him a kvittel, a piece of paper with the name of a Jew who had been slandering other Jews to the government and who was in general just a nasty guy. But when the Chozeh looked at his name, he pronounced that this man, through his piety, illuminated all of the celestial realms. The Hasidim could not understand how the Chozeh could be so mistaken about this rogue, and so later asked the Chozeh's son to approach his father about it. When challenged, the Chozeh responded, when they brought me this person's name, he was in the middle of the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles. That is why I saw in my vision that this man was illuminating the heavens. Sometimes we can look at people who have done very bad things and see goodness in them because of how they present at the moment. Conversely, we can also look at people who are genuinely good and get a negative first impression. That is why it pays to look deeply into someone's history before passing judgment. Moshe needed to gaze, but the people's input was also necessary. But there's another way of reconciling the two narratives. Moshe was instructing the nation that even though he had already discerned through his prophetic powers that particular individuals were worthy of being judges, that was not enough. Just because a person is righteous does not mean that he's the right choice for leading a group of people. Moshe needed to make sure that the people who were chosen would be accepted by their constituents. Each one needed to be well known and accepted by the people he would lead. He needed to have grown up with the tribe so that he could sympathize with their cultural mores, their sensitivities, and the unique way they lived their lives in that tribe. Oftentimes, people are quite pious and righteous, but they're not in touch with the way other people may live. They may be so wrapped up in their own tallis that they fail to see the value in others. They may look with condescension upon someone who may not be as outwardly righteous or religious as they are, or who may just be different in the way they live their lives. There may even be a subconscious antipathy towards the other or group of others. When choosing a judge, it's important to make sure that the judge has compassion and even love for the people he's being asked to judge. One of the things we try to atone for during these 9 days is the very ingredient that brought about the destruction of the Second Temple. According to our sages, it was sinat chinam, which sometimes is translated as senseless hatred. It's easy to absolve oneself of hatred because hatred is such an extreme word. I don't hate anyone, someone might say, but we could translate it as mild animosity or antipathy. I just don't relate to that person. They're too much this way or that way for me to feel that we have anything in common. This too is a form of sinat chinam. If we cannot find ourselves being able to relate to the person, if we haven't grown up with them and learned about their particular tribal culture, then we're not fit to judge them. As Hillel taught, Al tadin et chavercha ad shetagia limkomo. Do not judge another until you've reached his place. Instead, we should search for the redeeming value in every person, even if we may not approve of other aspects of their life. I may not approve of one thing in a person's life, say the way they observe Shabbat, but I certainly can respect them for another thing they do, such as how they support charities so generously. A community also needs to accept judges who will not be so wrapped up in their Tallis that they fail to see what's going on, either because they're oblivious or because they deliberately blind themselves, out of a fear that if they say something critical, they may lose their standing within the community. One of the well-known Gemara stories is that of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, where a host angrily threw Bar Kamsa out of his home where he was holding a party, because Bar Kamsa had received an invitation by accident. The rabbis who were present at the party were witness to Bar Kamsa's humiliation, but refused to defend him and rebuke their host instead. The Maharsha explains that the generation before the Churban was a generation of flatterers, of rabbis who looked the other way and didn't properly reproach their people. This resulted in the destruction of the temple. So, on the one hand, judges need to be compassionate and understanding of their people. At the same time, they have a duty to remove the tallis off their eyes and mouths, and instead plainly and openly discuss the areas of improvement that we as a community ought to make. If we wish to rebuild the temple, we need to be open to these kinds of judges, whether they be our rabbis, our friends, or even our children or students. And so, dear friends, may we all be blessed with the right people in our lives who can help guide us and inspire us so that this year will be the last Tisha B'Av without a temple. May we witness its rebuilding. B'mehera b'yameinu. Amen. Here's wishing you an amazing and beautiful Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom.